Over the last couple of years, Martin Ødegaard has been one of the best midfielders in the Premier League and quite possibly the planet. But a few short years ago he was playing for Reinvented and Vitesse after a failed stint at Real Madrid. So how did he get so good? Stick around to find out. Martin Ødegaard was born in December 1998 and started off at local club Drammen Strong, where he often played against boys 2 or 3 years older. And at age 10 he once scored 11 goals in a game to bring him to the attention of the bigger boys. One of those bigger boys were Sociedad, you know, the club who stole their badge from Real Madrid in the Netherlands, who took him on board. Now historically, Sociedad aren't a hotbed of developing young talent, with their highest profile players possibly being Pexels and Pixabay, coming through the academy before signing for Man City, and Andre Flo's big bro, Jostein Flo, playing there in his 30s. That's his 30s rather than the 30s, he's not that old. Oh, and also Usain Bolt. But despite that, Sociedad were going through a bit of a good spell at the time, as they won the Elite Serie in 2013 for only the second time ever, and first time in 43 years, and were also runners-up in 2012 and 15, so a young Martin seemed to be joining the right club at the right time. He even played his first game for them age 13 in a friendly against Mjøndalen, and later became the youngest ever player in the league, and amazingly only 130 odd days later made his debut for Norway, still age 15. He didn't play much to begin with, as he hadn't signed a professional contract, and he had to play in the league. Now remember, at this point he was still at school, so crafty Sociedad included him on their amateur players list, which meant he could play up to 3 matches a season. He couldn't train with Godset, as apparently their nickname is, due to school, so he instead trained with Mjøndalen twice a week. That's right, their rivals who Martin played against age 13 are partly responsible for his development. About a year after his debut he signed a pro contract which removed the 3 matches restriction. Just over a week later he scored his first goal, making him the league's youngest ever scorer, and just a few weeks later he played in the Champions League. Well, the qualifiers anyway. He continued his excellent progression until the end of the season, bagging a few goals and assists. So where did it all go wrong? Enter Real Madrid. With his form, a whole stack of European teams were queuing up to sign him, including Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern, Dortmund, Stuttgart and Juve. His dad claims over 30 teams contacted them, which even led to Martin going on a tour of Europe to visit team facilities to check them out, which seems bizarre to me, as it's almost like Ødegaard was putting the clubs on trial when it should have been the other way around. Barca thought they were favourites until the FIFA transfer ban ruined their plans. He had a meeting at Dortmund with Jurgen Klopp. Liverpool invited him for a 3-day visit, which must have been a dream for Martin, who grew up a huge Liverpool fan, which makes it more bizarre he said no to them. And then Man United, which was going well until Louis van Gaal had to stop during negotiations when it was suggested that Ødegaard should play with the first team straight away, causing negotiations to fail. So it was a bit of a surprise to some when he chose Real Madrid, when they came in with an offer of €4 million, but it does make sense when you think about it. Young Martin had just turned 16 at this point and knew he'd likely play in the reserve teams. At that point the Castilla coach was none other than Zinedine Zidane, not a bad player to receive your football education from, and Ødegaard recognised this and thought it would be important in his development. He also thought he could play competitive football straight away in the lower tiers, whilst also training and learning from the pros in the first team. The final seal in the deal was his dad being given a coaching role at Madrid, partly to help Martin acclimatise to a new country, which sounds ridiculous, his dad being made coach, but his dad was a midfielder himself, playing over 200 matches for Sociedad. Still not quite on Zidane's level, but it was a factor in Martin joining Madrid. But unfortunately it didn't quite work out for him in Madrid. Rumour has it that Zidane couldn't quite take to Ødegaard, which raises the question why they signed him in the first place. Well, I'll tell you. Carlo Ancelotti later said in his book that Ødegaard was signed by President Florentino Perez as a stunt. He said, quote, "When Florentino buys a Norwegian footballer, you simply have to accept it. The president decided he would play 3 games of the first team as a PR stunt." And if we still weren't sure if Ancelotti wanted him or not, he removed all doubt when he said, "He could be the best player in the world, but I don't care because he's not a player I asked for. That signing was to do with PR." Ouch. Then club politics didn't help. Zidane later became the first team manager and Perez forced him to take Ødegaard on a tour of North America in 2016. There were even reports that some teammates were getting aggy at Ødegaard receiving what they felt was preferential treatment by giving him freedom to practice with the first team while playing for the reserve team. And this was the initial plan for him, but his progress stalled. There were complaints about his attitude in training, and language barriers also seemed to be an issue. Despite this, Ødegaard became Madrid's youngest ever player in May 2015 when he came on as a sub for Ronaldo, which surely didn't help. I mean, imagine a 16-year-old being subbed on for Ronnie and the pressure that came with that. But it wouldn't be until 18 months later that he'd make his first start in a Copa del Rey match against Cultural Leonesa. But with his progress continuing to stall, both club and player knew a move away was on the cards. And so it was. In January 2017, having just turned 18, Ødegaard was loaned to Heerenveen for 18 months in an attempt to revive his career. Real even inserted a clause in his contract that Heerenveen must pay a penalty of €40,000 for every match he didn't play in. He had a decent spell at Heerenveen, but it was a loan move to Vitesse for the 2018-19 season which really sparked his career. He had a great season playing on the right flank, but given the freedom to cut inside whenever he wanted, where he scored 9 league goals with 12 assists, numbers which were only bettered by Tadic and Ziyech, and he was the only non-Ajax or PSV player in the team of the season, and at this point Los Blancos knew he needed a loan to a slightly higher level to further his progress. In stepped Ajax, Bayer Leverkusen and Real Sociedad with offers, and Ødegaard even went to Amsterdam, not for a dirty weekend away, but to meet Ajax director Mark Overmars before he became a sex pest. But they didn't agree on a deal, probably not helped by Ødegaard telling the media that he's not worth the €20 million fee. I mean, that's hardly going to get you a sale. Real thought a move to Germany would be best for his development, but they ultimately gave Ødegaard the choice. He looked at the Madrid team and saw Marco Asensio, Lucas Vazquez, Isco, Vinicius, Hazard and Rodrigo, and agreed that a move away would be best. He picked La Real, and the rest is history. Madrid were relatively happy with this, although they'd later be annoyed with him for reasons I'll reveal shortly, as it meant they could keep a better eye on his progress. But the long-term plan was always to return to Madrid, which is why he signed a new contract with them before leaving, with a modest release clause of €350 million. And it was at Sociedad during a 2-year loan where he progressed at a ridiculous rate in the 2019-20 season, starting off with 2 goals and 3 Man of the Match awards in his first 4 La Liga games, winning Player of the Month for September on his way to 10 goal contributions in the league, the same as Modric, and was the creative heartbeat of the Sociedad team who pushed for Champions League place and won the Copa del Rey, although in a cruel twist of fate he missed the final as it was delayed a year due to Covid, by which point he'd already moved on. And talking of Copa del Rey, it was that season he scored his first goal at the Bernabeu, Real Madrid's famous stadium, for Sociedad, in a 4-3 win in the quarter-final, knocking his parent club out of the competition. Oops. His first season was a resounding success with his vision, control and passing ability, even developing responsibility and leadership. He was arguably the best midfielder in La Liga that season, and now came another turning point in his career. Ødegaard had the option to stay at Sociedad for another year, and he did want to, looking at Madrid's midfield and seeing Modric, who may be pushing 50 but he's aging like a fine wine, and Toni Kroos stood in his way. But he was ultimately persuaded to return to Madrid, with Real recalling him from his loan. Was this to be the second coming? The story of the boy wonder coming back and tearing the league up? No. He played just a handful of times in the 2020-21 season, the first against Sociedad, believe it or not, and he asked Real for a transfer. Unfortunately, by this point Sociedad had already replaced him with David Silva, and to further rub it in gave him Ødegaard's old number 21 shirt. But Arsenal came in to save the day with a 6-month loan. In the same month they got rid of Ozil, who was also a Real Jet, which suited Ødegaard as he really needed a team who were gonna help him in his career. Get it? The Gunners? Ah, never mind. And he settled very well into life in the Premier League, completely transforming Arsenal. He suits Arteta's style perfectly, surrounded by young, energetic players in a pressing system, one of his strengths. And it didn't take Arsenal long to be convinced to sign him permanently either, paying Madrid £34 million for his services. And in the 2022-23 season, he was instrumental in Arsenal's push for the title, for their first in 20 years. And Arsenal might have bottled it in the end, but safe to say they'd have been nowhere near without Ødegaard. He's no doubt shown his resilience and strength of character in his career, which has clearly prompted Arteta to name Ødegaard as club captain. He started the 23-24 season off in much the same way, so it begs the question, what happened before? Well, his ex-Norway under-21 boss once said that Ødegaard is a team player who needs to develop relationships with teammates and coaches on and off the field, and that takes time, which makes sense. Last season was the first season since 2017-18 where he'd played for the same club for 2 consecutive seasons. He needed stability, and now he's found it at Arsenal, where he's trusted and valued. Let's not forget that at 16 he moved from a team who'd won the Norwegian League twice to a team who'd won the Champions League 1,000 times. And it's hard to believe he's still only 24, it seems like he's been around forever. So what does the future hold? On joining Sociedad, he said in an ESPN interview that his goal is to play for Real Madrid, and in 10 years I hope to be at Real. It could still be a possibility if he carries on like this. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, drop me a thumbs up, or even better, can't kick that subscribe button. If not, then give me a dislike. Go on, see if I care. Well, I do care, please don't do that. But whatever you do, thanks for watching and have a splendid day.